All right, man, peace. So, star Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton has recently made the news due to him defending his embattled owner, or soon-to-be former owner, Jerry Richardson, who has been accused of sexual misconduct as well as the use of racial slurs on Carolina Panthers employees. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Panthers quarterback Cam Newton has admitted that the days after Sports Illustrated's article reporting allegations for sexual and racial misconduct against team owner Jerry Richardson have been difficult. The quarterback explained why he's standing up for the only owner he has ever played for.
Being in a situation like this for myself, having gone through, something that's been put on your name, like I say, before I say anything, I take sexual assault extremely serious. But allegations, that's a different thing. In this day and time, it's almost you're automatically guilty until proven innocent.
Yes, brother, that's called fascism. That's called someone else's thoughts are superior to your thoughts, so you must conform to those thoughts. Okay? And this is the atmosphere and the environment that the Western or westernized male has tolerated, in his vain and silly belief that to do so makes him a higher level thinker or more understanding to the feminine principle. And this is why I tell you, brothers, incessantly that the woman is akin to a child. When you have a spoiled child, the child is going to continue to get worse and worse until you provide parameters and you provide barriers and stopping off points for the child to say, okay, this conduct will not be tolerated. Now, the woman has been privy to a lot of maltreatment by many of these men for years, and now they're taking advantage of the attention that they're getting by overdoing it and trying to turn situations that are not sexual misconduct into sexual misconduct so that they can express their vendetta against the masculine principle. And many of these two-dimensional thinking males are finally starting to wake up. But had they had some forethought, this environment would never have come to fruition in the first place. So it's going to be very interesting to see how things progress from here, because I mentioned in a previous video that the advocates for the super liberal ideologies and the advocates for maintaining some respect for the masculine principle, they are heading for a major cataclysmic showdown. And what we all know is that most adherents to liberal ideologies, they can dish it out, but they can't take it. So they have created a dynamic where they're going to force a certain demographic of people to take a strong stance against the propaganda that they're trying to push, that being female superiority. And you're going to start to see the rising up of males and men who are not going to tolerate it. So now let's see how things go.
Rather than in the rights of the judicial system, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. So everything that I've heard were allegations.
Well, this is where the brother's incorrect. Jerry Richardson has settled numerous quote-unquote accusations. Why? Because he knows that there is some credibility to those accusations. That's number one. Number two, as I stated in the Sean P. Diddy Combs video, in which Sean Combs and Colin Kaepernick are supposed to be a part of a group that is trying to buy the Carolina Panthers, or thinking about being the group that will buy the Carolina Panthers. I believe that this narrative, this storyline, is going to be used as substantiation for why an NFL franchise should be transitioned over from a quote-unquote conservative owner to a quote-unquote liberal owner. What will that do? That will provide a plant in the NFL for the liberal faction, the liberal investors overseas, the type of people who bankroll many of these discordian movements, to have an entire franchise in the NFL that they can use to push their propaganda, as opposed to having just one player like a Colin Kaepernick. I've already advanced the theory that P. Diddy is most likely working with the Black Lives Matter movement as well as George Soros. And I'm sure that he will be a major behind-the-scenes investor to provide capital to substantiate Sean Combs possibly being an owner for the team, for the Carolina Black Panthers. So we'll see what happens. Beyond that, when Cam Newton talks about Jerry Richardson being his owner, he may be his owner in more ways than one. I personally believe that Cam shows some traits of being a Monarch athlete. Who knows?
And nothing was actually proven. It's just of another person's word versus that person's word. But needless to say, man, I still think extremely highly of Mr. Richardson.
For more on Cam's comments, let's get it back to First Take.
Now, pay very close attention to Molly Karam and how she opens her statements. Look at how she's breathing.
Take.
Okay, so Cam defending Jerry Richardson and...
Did you guys see that? She opened with a very deep exhale. She clearly is still very much aggravated by Cam Newton and his stance. Remember, in the last two-part video that I did on Cam Newton, which I believe was in reference to his statement about a female reporter talking about routes, Molly Karam ended one of the episodes of First Take by levying a series of very personal attacks against Cam Newton, trying to compare him to Colin Kaepernick, etc. And I told you guys in that video that the liberal female would do that towards the so-called black male when he does not know his place. Remember, the so-called black man is viewed strictly as a toy. And I did a video on the movie The Toy starring Richard Pryor. All right? The liberal Caucasian, the female, all these demographics view the so-called black man as a toy, meaning a vessel for entertainment. You're just here to make me happy. When the so-called black man shows that his intentions are not to make these various demographics happy, they will all utilize the same tactics against him, that being denigration. So just pay very close attention to Molly Karam in this segment.
And at least for now, Will Kane, Darren Woodson here with us. I'll start with you, Will. Are you okay with what Cam said?
I watched you guys earlier. I watched the segment to start off the lead of the show with the three of you guys, and I got to tell you, I'm 100% with Stephen A. on this. I thought Cam handled that wonderfully. And Molly, I don't think he's defending Jerry Richardson there. What I think he's doing is neglecting to convict Jerry Richardson, and that's very different, and we can't conflate. Are you defending someone, or are you simply waiting to convict them?
Will Kane's points are relevant, but let's be for real. The reason why Will Kane likes what Cam Newton said is because Cam Newton is showing that he respects the chain of command, that being black athlete, white owner. That's really what Will Kane is saying. That's why he likes the fact that Cam Newton is defending his quote-unquote owner.
Those are not the same. Now, I really want to tell the three of you, I thought you had an awesome conversation. I listened to it, and, you broke it down from both the individual level and the societal level, and you said one thing, Molly, that I wanted to revisit, which you said, these are not just allegations. Cam has reiterated several times, allegations, allegations, allegations. And you point out they're not just allegations, which is true.
4 settlements for misconduct.
That's correct.
Yes.
But it's also not proof.
Okay.
A settlement is not a proof of guilt.
Well, you know what? Then you guys should take that same tact in the O.J. Simpson case, because according to many of the same people who may defend a Jerry Richardson, who settled on 4 different disputes, O.J. Simpson showed that he was guilty because he came to that he was found liable in a civil case with the Goldman family. Supposedly that proves that he killed Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson, allegedly.
It is, and as Max pointed out, some level of evidence, or it looks bad to some extent. But what Cam has done here
Isn't it proof of bad behavior, potentially?
Not necessarily, Molly. It can be. It looks bad. But you got to understand, it's a secretive world. Why did you settle? What did you settle for? What were the facts of the settlement? Sometimes, not always, people settle just to make something go away because they don't either want to deal with the hassle or they don't want their name in the news. Sometimes they settle because they're guilty and they want it to go away as well. The point is, I don't know. I don't know with Jerry Richardson. And with 4 of them, it looks really bad. I will give you that. It looks really bad. But Cam has said 2...
No, sir, it doesn't look really bad. The fact of the matter is that Jerry Richardson is an entitled old billionaire who felt like because he had the power to hire attractive women that he should be able to run his hands across their breasts while they were sitting in a vehicle with him. That's what he felt. Okay, so let's not act like that's not the case. And as I've already stated, people have no problem trying to use civil settlements or civil verdicts as proof of O.J. Simpson's guilt. So let's not change the narrative for Jerry Richardson.
2 or 3 things that I agree with. Number one, in society, we are certainly in a place where allegations right now equal convictions.
Yes, and people like you are the ones who did not stand up when they were trying to create that dynamic. So now you're trying to bring it out now that that dynamic has already been established. Once again, the so-called liberal woman is going to have to be faced. She's going to be face down. Okay? Men are going to have to start standing up against these women and the dynamic that they're trying to promote. And the main way that you stand up against them is by not allowing them to create that dynamic in the first place. By the time you have to go back and forth with a woman, it's already going to be an unnecessary expense of energy because the woman is like a child. They don't want to deal with facts. They only want to deal with their feelings. The main way that you deal with the liberal female now is to ignore them. Don't even let them create that dynamic involving you. Let them go take that to some other simpleton.
Number 2, when it comes to Jerry Richardson, we have allegations. Molly point out, no, we have a little more. We should know that. But finally, Cam, and this is where Stephen A. comes in, I heard you, Cam has a relationship with Jerry Richardson. Now you can say, well, that means he's compromised. He works for the man. He has to say it. Or you could say he knows the guy and he has further insight. Either way, I thought Cam on all these levels was really good. He was taking the prudent position all the way through.
You said that he sounded really good, or that he was really good, as if he was somebody who was reading from a script. You say he was really good as if he was an employee who was keeping the company line. This is why I say oftentimes when these talking heads make their assertions, you have to truly evaluate the intent behind their statements. Because oftentimes people will say one thing that is meant to communicate a certain message consciously, but subconsciously they're communicating a different message. And that is that Cam Newton, he did a good job. He was a good boy. He did not turn against his benefactor, i.e. his quote-unquote owner. And these are things that the black man must be very, very scrupulous about, particularly in this time period. Not just the people who declare themselves to be against you, but the people who try to act like they're your friends or like they're with you. Once again, this channel is geared towards the so-called black man. It will always be geared towards the so-called black man. And Cam Newton has to be very careful in regards to who he decides to support for whatever reason. As we can see, that the rapper Nelly has recently decided that he's going to file a lawsuit against the female who accused him of raping her. And that's a great step. The modern day female has to be held according to the same standards that she's trying to stipulate for everyone else. Since she has decided that she is no longer going to tolerate being the victim of sexual misconduct, men should also decide that they're not going to be the victims of sexual misconduct. Now, the best way to do that, and the way that I constantly advocate for on this channel, is for men to ignore most of these women, because most of them are not worth giving attention to. If you really pay close attention, most of these females are really suffering. And this is why they use time periods like the ones that we're in to try to gather as much attention to themselves as they can. Because that's the only time that the woman really feels relevant, is when a man is giving her attention in some way. That's a way for her to try to generate chaos for herself and for others. The liberal woman does. Okay? So, men are definitely going to have to show greater scruples, be as assiduous as possible when dealing with issues like this, particularly in this quote-unquote climate.
I would agree with that. I mean, listen, I put myself in a situation where his owner is Jerry Richardson, the owner of the Dallas Cowboys all those years, that was Jerry Jones. And I can imagine being in that same position as Cam Newton and having that strong relationship with the ownership. So I probably would have been as defensive as Cam. Here's my issue right now, and I'm taking it from a football point of view. Right now, at this time of the year, you're getting ready to play for the playoffs. Basically, you have 2 more games to see if you decide whether you're in the playoffs or not. From a football point of view, you don't want to have these type of conferences going on right now. I mean, you don't want to be in front of the camera right now.
Especially Cam Newton, who's really not very good with words. Cam is not the most eloquent individual, so he should really be very careful, because he's prone to make a verbal misstep that will lead to another media narrative that can carry over into the playoffs that he has to deal with. So sometimes it's not good to be forthright. Oftentimes people want to be transparent, but you have to decide when it is the right situation for you to be transparent. Because these media people, they have deadlines and they have other things that they must adhere to, and they have to try to find as many provocative stories as they can to make themselves relevant. Right now, one of the major storylines in quote-unquote American culture is the Me Too movement, and how they're going to try to have that trickle back over into the NFL. Remember, we had an issue with that back with Ray Rice, and also with Hardy, who was formerly with Greg Hardy, who was formerly with the Carolina Panthers. So now they're going to try to trickle that back over into the NFL. The NFL is just right now trying to recover from the confusion that was caused by the woke conglomerate, the adherents, the worshipers of Colin Kaepernick. So it goes from one issue to another with the NFL. This is why I stated that a code red has been called on the NFL by the liberal power structure.
Talking about ownership and legal allegations and whatnot. Cam Newton right now needs to be focused on getting ready for this next game. And I think that's where the problem I have with it, the conversation continued on and on and on about these allegations, where it shouldn't go that way. And I understand it's boring. I'm the boring guy on the set right now. I don't want to, you never want to give the media all this information, nor do you want to put yourself in a situation where you get these arrows back at you. The way you handle it is the way that New England would probably handle it, which is the boring way. But that's the way I would like to see the Carolina Panthers handle this. Move on from the football side. This does not need to be on the player side. They need to get this off their plate, get ready for the next game.
Confining his comments, Cam's comments, if we're strictly talking about his comments in a vacuum, Will, I agree with you. In fact, he even prefaced his comments by saying, essentially, let me make this very clear. Let's not get this twisted.
Well, every male who speaks in regards to the issue, the so-called Me Too movement issue right now, has to issue some form of disclaimer. Because the media is waiting for a verbal misstep so that they can take that person's words out of context and try to make him more fodder for the liberal agenda. Make him more cannon fodder. So Cam was right to do that. He was intelligent to issue that disclaimer early on. But what he did not do correctly was he did not properly evaluate the situation that his owner is in. All right. And when I use that term, his owner, I use that in quotes, because Jerry Richardson is actually the owner of the Carolina Panthers. He really is not the owner of Cam Newton per se. But then again, who knows? As I stated earlier in the video, Jerry Richardson may have the keys to Cam's altars if Cam Newton is what I have a suspicion he may be. But that's a whole other video for another day.
This is a very serious issue. I am not making it in any way glossing over. It's a very serious issue. But I want to talk about essentially burden of proof, standards of evidence, and that kind of stuff. So if we're confining it just to that comment, I agree. But contextualize a little bit here. I was talking about Cam misplaced loyalty. Loyalty is a quality I admire, and it is important to...
Yeah, you admire in others, but most likely not in yourself. Max Kellerman comes off to me as a rat, allegedly.
It shows itself most when it's inconvenient to be loyal. And you can make the argument, well, here, Cam's not being loyal to Jerry Richardson as a friend or a mentor or a guy who signs his checks. He's simply kind of staying neutral and making a larger point. Okay, I understand that, but I also have seen comments from Cam that suggest to me that he does feel a kind of friendship or something like that, loyalty toward Richardson. And the point I was making is that seems to me to happen often in salary cap leagues where the person, the athlete feels grateful that this guy is signing their checks. I mean, Dan Gilbert took that attitude toward that posture toward LeBron, even though LeBron didn't reciprocate that feeling. And my point simply is, Jerry Richardson, personal relationship aside, it's just a clearinghouse between the money and Cam. There are 31 other owners who'd have paid him the exact same amount, signed the same checks. Richardson really hasn't done anything for him in that way.
Well, from your perspective, that's how you view it, and that's very understandable. Cam Newton may feel that Jerry Richardson has been a quote-unquote father figure to him. Many of these athletes, for whatever reason, feel like these owners are father figures to them. Maybe he feels like Jerry Richardson has his best interest at heart. I'm not equipped to state whether or not those feelings would be valid if he were to have those feelings. But it could also be that Cam Newton is speaking from the perspective of someone who also feels that he was accused of committing a certain act or quote-unquote crime that he didn't commit. And he's using this situation as a platform to act as if is supportive of Jerry Richardson, when in reality he just wants to address people accusing someone of being guilty of a crime that really has not been proven yet. So who knows what's going on in Cam Newton's head?
Content of Cam's statement, I also agree with.
Max, I get where you're coming from, but with all due respect, you don't get to be the one that makes that claim for Cam Newton.
I agree.
If Cam Newton has a relationship with the man, he has a relationship with the man, whatever that may be. And it's not all defined by the fact that you could have got the money and you would have had the same cachet playing somewhere else or for someone else.
That's why I stated that I agree with Kellerman in regards to Cam Newton and the fact that he could get money elsewhere. But at the same time, he does not understand the scope of Cam Newton's relationship with Jerry Richardson. And also, it's clear to me that Max Kellerman is a rat.
Your personal relationship with this individual does have context. It does share.
Agreed.
It does harbor some level of significance in that regard. The point that I wanted to make, and I don't disagree with anything everybody said outside of what I just mentioned. I don't disagree with Will. I don't disagree with Darren. I don't even disagree with Max. But I think Darren. Anyway, I think the important point to make here is what I tried to say earlier. When Cam spoke, Richardson was almost an aside. It came across as an excuse to say what he really wanted to say.
Exactly, Stephen A.
And that is that at this particular moment in time, with each and every single one of us recognizing and fully co-signing, we don't support sexual harassment of any kind, sexual assault, rape, anything like that. Anybody who's guilty of such things, off with them. Throw them someplace, fire them, do whatever you got to do to get rid of them, because such behavior simply cannot be tolerated.
Yes, after they've been placed in a very thorough protocol in which all attempts and all avenues are exercised to try to ascertain whether the person is actually guilty of what they've been accused of, sure.
But we are living in a day and age where you have an abundance of men who are walking around literally petrified, because it appears as if the times that we're living in, a sheer allegation can cost you your career.
Well, of course, because that's the atmosphere that you guys helped implement in the aftermath of the Ray Rice case. That's what happens when you allow manginas to be the intelligentsia of a community. A man who thinks and acts like a female, he's going to be a two-dimensional thinker. He's not going to see things as they may transpire. He's just going to go according to his whims and his emotions. And then he's going to come back in the aftermath and say, oh, wow, I can't believe that the time that we're living in. Yes, you're the one who helped to create that time. You helped that. You are one of the people who were a heavy contributor to the time period that we're in right now. Because your default emotion in any time of hardship or adversity is fear, as opposed to utilizing some form of strong reasoning. So you can't complain now.
You got people that are petrified to even broach the subject because they're scared that just broaching the subject could get you in trouble.
Yes, because you're scared that you're going to trigger some female who was running around being a hoe and ran into some crazy dude and got raped, or maybe got raped because she's too drunk to remember. So now every time you have a serious conversation, it's like trying to step through a minefield. You never know when an explosion is going to go off. And this is why you're not supposed to be engaging females in serious conversations anyway, unless it's a woman that you're in a relationship with or that you're being intimate with. And even then, you have to be very, very careful, because most women don't know how to handle serious conversations.
That's the world that we're living in. And Cam Newton, a marquee athlete, $60 million guaranteed, a contract in excess of $100 million, was in a position when asked that question, look at him and listen to what he said. Jerry Richardson almost came across and as an aside. What I really want to say is, boom. And then he pointed out the times that we're living in. And if you look at a lot of guys, Cam Newton wasn't the only one that spoke up on behalf of Jerry Richardson, and other players spoke up. The acting GM spoke up on his behalf and talked about what Jerry Richardson meant to him. Nobody sat up there and critiqued it. They accepted it on face value. But with Cam Newton, it's a little bit different. And he's saying, hey, these are the times that we're living in, and it's causing a lot of people to be alarmed. Richardson was the excuse to make that point.
I just want to add one thing really quickly also to your earlier point, Will, is Cam might not have even known of some of these forced settlements. I'm not even sure if he's aware of that. And the other...
He most likely didn't know. Cam Newton doesn't strike me as a person who's a researcher.
Other thing I want to say, I totally agree with you, Stephen A., from the point that men are scared and they're kind of guilty to...
I don't think that men are scared. I think that manginas are scared. I think that men just don't want to be bothered with the dumb shit. I think that most men are at the point now where they just don't want to be bothered. They prefer to be left alone. And for the most part, the whimsicality and the capricious nature of the woman and of the mangina is more trouble than it's worth. Most men are going to retreat and let many of these low-level thinkers try to figure things out on the fly, which is what they're doing. When you're a three-dimensional thinker, you try to see things 4, 5, 6 steps ahead. As I've spoken on numerous times on this channel, there is a heavy Marxist element to the liberal propaganda, to these ideologies. They try to pawn out certain factions that they know have been marginalized historically in society, in this society, I should say, whether it be females or people of other races, and they try to appeal to them through quote-unquote equality programs. All they need you to do is to be willingly engage in some form of Discordianism. And from there, then they can implement their true goals.
Till proven innocent, but as a woman, I can tell you, a lot of women are also walking around and have been sexually harassed and have been unfairly treated for years and years and years, and we're also scared about our job, and that's why we've been quiet. So it's both. I get both sides. I just want to make that point.
I know you get both sides. I know you get both sides. But I'm going to say something to a whole bunch of women out there. In case y'all haven't noticed, there's a whole bunch of men that come to y'all defense that say, you know what, those dudes ain't worth a damn. Something needs to be done with them. And there's men every day, good men who love women, love their families, they were raised by mothers, raised by sisters, and beyond, who were quick to come to the defense of any woman they see being victimized, and that needs to be recognized too. If any four of us were walking down the street and we saw a woman be...
Stop speaking for people other than your damn self. Shoot, them other 3 dudes could be rapists for all you know. The hell you talking about? The hell, Stephen A., you could be a damn rapist. No, don't nobody know what you're doing off camera. Brothers, please notice how both of these parties, whether it's Stephen A. Smith or Malik Kerm, they're continuously using the word fear. And you can't receive any edification through fear-mongering. The main thing that fear is going to do is it's going to make it easier for certain factions who may have certain motivations in regards to social engineering. Fear is going to make it easier to have new laws implemented to change society in the way that they want it to be changed. And you just notice how confused both parties are. Why is that? Because you have two different two-dimensional thinkers. Stephen A. and Molly Qerim. This is why I call a lot of these people pawns. They don't really understand how they're being maneuvered. They don't understand why certain things are occurring. And, basically what they do is they trust their feelings and their emotions as opposed to just paying attention to what's going on around them. Stephen A. Smith keeps going on and on and on about the women in his life that raised him. Dude, it's not about that. Do you have some male energy? Do you understand why you think what you think and really what's going on here? Molly Qerim is another female who, let's be for real, she has a lot of penis envy. This is why she wants to get into the sports world and be a commentator there and talk about a bunch of men running around catching a football or shooting a basketball. Why is that? Because her entire validation as a human being is trying to see if she can do what men can do. And this is what's caused so much discord between men and women in this society. The woman has been taught that the whole meaning to her life should be trying to be a man. And the man is being taught that his whole meaning to life is that he should worship the woman. And now both parties are very unhappy. When you watch these shows on ESPN, all these women are dressed as if they're going out on a date. They no longer dress as if they're going to work to be professional. So most of them proactively put on attire to try to promote or provoke some form of attention from men. And then when they get that attention, they accuse the man of sexual misconduct. So therefore, the woman in the workplace, for the most part, is an agent of chaos. How could they be anything other than that? I mean, it's really just a comedy of errors.
Being harmed in any way, we would all do something about it. That needs to be mentioned too.
Of course. And Stephen A., that's why I started my comments with I totally understand the male perspective as well, because they're...
No, you don't understand the male perspective. How could you understand the male perspective? If a man said, I understand the female perspective, you would say, how could you? That's the problem with you men. You always think that you understand women.
They're dealing with a different struggle. All right, Darren, appreciate you. We'll talk to you guys soon when we come back.
But anyway, that is the Cam Newton discussion. We'll see where that goes. Peace.